Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our weekly post show. We hope that you really enjoyed today's service and got a lot from today's message. If you've never tuned in one of our post shows before, basically what we do is we take today's message and we dive even deeper into ways that we can apply it to our lives. We tackle any questions that might come up within this, and we have a little bit of fun while doing it. My name is Josh. I'm one of the pastors here at the church. This is Dave. He was the one you just heard up on stage. He's also one of the pastors here. And this is Elizabeth. Elizabeth does like everything around here. And then this is Layla. Layla is the one that might have been talking to you on the live stream during today's service. So if you ever have a question in the middle of the message, you can drop it in there and Layla will answer that for you. So,
whoa, Layla.
There we go.
I'll try my best.
She will try her
people
best.
should chat more with Layla.
Yes, they should chat more with
She's there and
Layla.
available, and it's like that you really should take advantage of.
She's so fun to talk to.
She really
Yes.
is.
And
And
I love
insightful.
Layla. Yes.
And I think I have some pretty good jokes too. If,
She's
you
the
know.
best.
Awesome.
joke.
She does. If you
So
should
much better
watch
than
the
Andy's.
pre-show. Yeah, so much
What,
better
was,
than Andy.
what was the joke today?
Oh,
Do you remember it?
yeah. Well, I mean, not off the top of my head, but I have it. And is it okay if we have
Yes.
a moment for
Say
a
the
joke?
joke.
Are you kidding?
I-
of
never
course.
know.
We need a little bit of filler time to get through these technical difficulties that we're having
Okay,
right now
yes,
with
this
this
is
iPad.
perfect.
So
Jokes.
So today's joke was specifically for Andy. He loves Star Wars. So,
He does.
Does he?
yeah, I guess. What did Master Yoda say when he saw himself on a 4K TV?
Oh no.
He said, HD, am I?
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
You, I have some good
HDMI.
jokes.
That is
Thanks
good.
to the Google.
That's like one that's like, it's a little bit of a thinker.
It
like
is.
for like half a second, I'm
oh
like,
my gosh.
Welcome to Andy's life. You can catch
That-
this every pre-show.
that might be my new favorite pre-show joke. That was so
That's a good one.
Yeah, but we ended up talking about for his movie review, Godzilla -1. So I do a joke and Andy does a movie review. So then I
Nice.
was like, oh man, next week I'll try to see if I can have a Godzilla joke.
Oh.
Total side note before we start, I watched this movie called Candy Cane Lane on Friday.
Okay.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's got Eddie Murphy in it.
Oh.
It's a clean movie. It's family friendly. There are a couple of bad words, but other than that, family friendly. It is one of the best Christmas movies I've ever watched.
Really?
It is that good of a like.
You're
I was
kidding.
I'm being dead serious. That is one of the best Christmas
Eddie
movies
But
I've
you know,
ever
Josh,
mean,
you
yeah.
watch
He's
so
fantastic.
few movies.
I've watched a ton of Christmas movies though. My wife loves Christmas movies, so we
that.
watch Christmas movies. That
Are
movie,
you one of the people that define Christmas movie as any movie that came out around Christmas time?
no,
Like, I bet Andy thinks Godzilla's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, probably.
no,
I
no.
thought at first you were gonna say it was like a horror movie.
Nope.
Like
Yeah.
Candy Cane.
Nope,
Candy
it
Cane
is-
Lane.
It does, like, Candy Cane Lane.
Yeah,
No,
that
it
sounds
is-
much more creepier than mine.
It is
Candy
great.
Lane.
It is great. It is one of my favorite Christmas movies ever. Like I'm being dead
Wow.
serious.
All right. Well,
I
that's
I
kind of
really
fun.
liked it. Maybe
All right.
Andy's gonna go watch it now.
There's two movies
Wow,
you guys
that'd
have
be
There we
heard
go.
from us.
Two
Candy Cane
movies.
Lane or Godzilla
Yep.
-1.
It's very good.
You pick.
Alrighty. The technical difficulties are fixed, so we can go ahead and hop into
Perfect.
today's
Wow.
discussion.
Just
needed
So
some
the first question, every single week, this is the classic one. Also, you could go into our live chat right now. When we ask this question, you can put in the live chat what stood out to you the most in this first question. So the question is, what stood out to you in today's message? So in the live stream, if you're joining
Yeah.
us, you can just type in what stood out to you the most. We'd
Yeah.
love to hear it.
Yeah. I took notes on my
Oh, I
phone
did too.
today.
I'm gonna pull out my notes too.
Yeah, wow.
I bolded one section though. Let me go down to it. This was my favorite one. It was towards the middle, where Dave, you said that the hurt you experienced in the past was not your fault. That you didn't ask for it
Yeah.
and you didn't deserve it, and that was just like give me goosies when you were saying it, because again, I think it's something that deep down in our hearts we know that that's the case, but you don't hear that often.
Yeah.
And to just hear it, I felt it. It just, you know what I mean? It was just felt like a really good reminder, and it's easy, especially if you're actively wrestling with hurt, to get twisted thoughts around it and to feel the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. Those like two sentences, like that just
Yeah.
resonated with me
Yeah.
so much.
I literally wrote the exact same thing, and I bolded it, and
Yeah.
I bolded the thing you said after it. I was like typing as you were saying. I was like, "Can't miss this." But you said, "What will happen when we are hurt is we become aware of weaknesses in our character or in our faith that become an opportunity to grow." And I have never thought of it that way. And it was something that, like, with everything that I am struggling with right now, it's just, I'm kind of stuck in this, like, oh, well, maybe it was my fault type of a thing. And so hearing that, it's just like, I gotta remember to, like, refocus.
The enemy's going to try to do that to you.
Oh, yeah.
With literally anything that you experience in your life. Like, he is going to try to make you think it's your fault or that you're the reason that you got hurt by X, Y, and Z. So,
And I think that that's really important because that is so real and powerful, the enemy, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy, I think, to say that and, you know, it's like in one ear and out the other. But
Yeah.
like I've had recent moments too where I feel like I've been like face to face with Satan and like the thoughts in my head and even just like looking at myself in the mirror. I think I mentioned it on one of the past post shows. Like I literally felt his presence, you know, but at the same time I feel God's presence and I know that, you know, what's in my heart and like, I'm like, bring it, right? Like this, you're not going to destroy,
not going to win.
you're not going to destroy me. And these thoughts, like I have to break them down and tear them down and I can't do that without God. But it's still like,
That's right.
I have so many moments though where I question it and I start to get lost and it's like I'm like diving into this black hole where I spin, right? And the mind is such a powerful thing and between the mind and the hurt, it's like a
that's right.
dynamic duo.
Absolutely.
Godzilla, King Kong.
Satan wants to condemn.
Yeah.
And so what he will, and he's a counterfeiter. So what he will do is he will take weaknesses that surface and then go, you see this about you? You're a horrible person.
Yeah.
You see this about you? You deserved what happened to you. You see what surfaced in you? This is why you're no good and will never amount to anything. That's the voice of the devil seeking to condemn us.
Yeah.
God never speaks like that. There is no condemnation, Scripture says, to those that are in Christ Jesus. His words are never like that. It always comes with hope and a future. So that's just a really good thing to remember because Satan's good.
Yeah.
We'll take a weakness that surfaced, we'll feel conviction about it, then he piggybacks on it to go, that means you're no good, and to condemn us. God never does that.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a couple things that stood out to me in today's message. The first one was the diagnostic step that you gave us before we even got to the healing, the treatment program, and that was should I overlook the hurt or does it need attention?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's exactly how you worded it, but like I remember sitting there like that is before you even go any further with whatever the hurt is, whatever that thing is, like you need to sit down and look at it. Go, do I need overlook this? Like that person that they did they like not even think that they hurt me or whatever? Do I overlook this or do I actually need to address this? Yeah. And I think that's a question that myself, but all of us need to ask each other more because that can save us from getting that bitter root, like it talked about in Hebrews. But then the other thing that stood out to me was at the very end where you said, well, what does healing look like? And it was like, I wrote down, you get a scar, but that scar is a sign that you lived. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, man, all the stuff that I've been through and that I thought I wasn't going to overcome, like I have these scars, but like it shows that I've gotten through it and I lived. So those are the two things that really stood out to me. Oh, and a third one, actually, I just thought of it. The one where you're talking about like the doing the forgiveness exercise. Like you were talking about, like, some people even put a chair in front of them. I did that with forgiving my dad. Wow. I haven't seen my dad since everything happened between me and him, but whenever I was forgiving him, my youth pastor, who was Mike, who was on here a couple weeks ago, put a empty chair in front of me at summer camp and said, pretend like you're talking to your dad and forgive him right now. And that's what I did. So that was a cool little thing that you said. That I'm like, I've done this before.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Our imagination is such a powerful thing.
Yep.
Because when what we're imagining is something that's righteous and good, it's not a fantasy. Yeah. It's something right and good that we want to be. That is a way of powerfully reinforcing right inside of us and can help pave the way to living that out in a very powerful and consistent way.
For sure. Dave, out of everything that you shared, what stood out to you the most out of everything that you shared? That when you were writing it, you were like, man, God is speaking to me right now through this one.
What stood out the most to me when I was actually giving the message was how quickly time passes, and I couldn't talk about the end the way that I wanted to. what stood out to me the most is this, that there are inevitable things that will develop in my life if I don't access the grace of God and cooperate with him in the healing process. Because I can look back at periods of my time where I have been the person who has been either relationally caustic, and for the most part, that's the way I've gone.
Yeah.
The other ones were, sexually careless, or people that are spiritually callous, like the things that really matter to God don't really matter that much to me. For me, it's that first one. It's that crustiness that I can develop as a self-preservation mechanism for getting hurt again. But that self-preservation mechanism doesn't lead to healing, cripples me from being able to love people deeply and experiencing the life God wants. So that's probably the one that hit me the most, because it's the one that I've struggled with in my past.
That's good. That's really good. Does anybody else have anything that stood out to them in today's message before we move on to the next question? All righty. This is going to tie into that diagnostic that you gave us.
Okay.
How can we decide if we should overlook or address hurt?
That's a good one.
I don't know if this is the right answer or not, but the first thing that pops in my head is if I want to overlook it, I probably need to address it. Like my natural instinct is like, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
That's probably my mechanism. I know it is actually. Now that I say it out loud, I'm like, I'll just sweep this one under the rug.
And that's a whole other question within it.
Yeah.
Is your desire to overlook it just a desire to avoid conflict?
Bingo.
So,
just like
so
that.
there's a whole other thing that you have to address
Yeah.
in the question to address the hurt.
That's exactly
So-
right.
And it's not even necessarily conflict. More than likely it is probably like conflict with somebody else, but even the conflict within myself and my thoughts and how I feel, and like wrestling with it, right?
Yeah.
Like that, doing all of these things, writing things down. Like I agree with all of them, but I don't want to process it, and I don't want to feel the feelings because it's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard.
It is emotion. I mean, it's good at the end, but
Yeah.
when you're processing it and being real with it, it is unexplainable. And I can't imagine, and I have done this before, not doing it with God, right? Like trying to process this and get out of a hurtful situation and, get to the other side. I think that can be really dangerous to do without God, especially like depending on what type of hurt you're dealing with. It could potentially lead others down paths of addiction or, doing more harm than good. So,
For sure.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's good. It's like rehab.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rehab is critical for turning a successful surgery into full functionality. But rehab
I
hurts.
hate rehab.
It hurts. Right? I've had 2 surgeries, rehab both. Not a pleasant process. But you go through the pain and difficulty so that you can be fully functional. And of course, on the other end, you're so glad you did.
Yeah.
But emotional rehab feels the same way. It's hard.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talked about last week was with like the God box idea. And I kind of applied that same mentality to something like this. Whenever I feel like I'm wrong, like, okay, do I overlook this or not? Like, I'll always start by giving it to God. And if I feel like I have to go back and grab it because it's still bothering me, then I go like, all right, I probably should have a conversation with this person about
Yeah.
it. That's kind of usually how I
like
look
that.
at it. I'm like, all right, yeah, I need to address this if I can't just hand it over and forgive and move on. So, but if I do decide that, I'm like, all right, I'm going to overlook this. Like I make the intentional step. I'm like, I am going to overlook this. Like I'm not going to sit here and hold this against them. Or if something happens 2 months later, I'm not going to bring up that past offense to let it piggyback off of the current offense. I'm going to like fully like really just drop that one. So
I found for me a couple of things that help in this messy process of figuring out cover it or address it. And is it something I should cover, or like Layla so wisely said, or am I just going, I don't want to deal with this, and sweep it under the rug, which creates huge problems down the road, right? Is I go, number one, can I let it go? Because if it keeps bugging me tomorrow and next week and next month, well, then clearly it was a big enough deal. I can't really
Yeah.
just, move on. And then I also have to try to ask myself the question, was this like an intentional, willful sin against me? Or was it an inadvertent word, a dumb comment? So it wasn't really intended to be that way. Maybe the person was having a bad moment. I kind of factor those in to go, that I'm not going to do it. If Jesus dealt with every dumb thing anybody did, it's all he would ever have done.
It's true.
I'd keep him really busy.
That's right. But it's like, no, but he did address the bigger significant things, and somehow grappling with a way under the leadership of God's Spirit to figure out what to do becomes really important. Those are things that help me in that sloppy process.
Yeah,
I like that.
for sure. Anybody got anything else to add on to this one? All righty. Well, Dave, you gave us 4 steps for a treatment program. The first one was air your grievances. The second was look to Jesus as like a mentor. The third was identify growth points. And the fourth was to seek to settle. So my question for you guys is, we'll start it this way, and if we have time, we'll switch it to the other one. But out of this treatment program, which one would you say is the hardest for you to do, and why?
Number 4.
Number 4.
That's the point where you're right. You're
Yep.
more than likely needing to
Yep.
come face to face with somebody and talk through it. And I am not a fan of, conflict.
Yeah.
I was trying to envision like an exercise because there's definitely things where I have a situation where the person's not here anymore. And again, even though that person might not be in the chair, that's still that's hard. I mean, I
Yeah,
can't
yes, it
imagine the emotion that you felt, right, going through the exercise, right, with your dad. And I could do the same thing with my dad too, right? But it's again, putting myself in a moment of vulnerability, of feeling, and it's just, I am a firm believer. I absolutely trust that I need to do it, and it's going to help in ways I don't understand. But that number 4 will always be the part that's going to be the hardest for me to get to, just because it's the one I'm going to feel the most.
For sure.
The most yucky stuff. But the good thing is at the end, right? So,
Yeah, for sure.
What about you? What's the hardest?
I'd probably agree. Number 4. Just because when you were talking about like emotional rehab and how much it hurts, I feel like I get stuck in that hurt, and then I pull back. I'm like, no, I can't do this anymore. I need to do something that will make me feel better. And it gets scary when I'm like, oh, but it might get worse before it'll get better. So then I'm like, nope, I need to pull myself out of it, and I need to be back to where I was okay-ish.
Yeah.
Instead of getting to where I'll be good.
Yeah.
And so that's hard for me to kind of push through that to then get to a point where I can do number 4.
Yeah.
That's real life right there.
Yes. Yeah. Mine is 100% without a doubt number 1.
Yeah.
I watched people around me bottle up everything. I mean, my dad especially bottled up all of his anger and his frustration until it just exploded. And it was all these grievances that happened years ago that he just had bottled and bottled and bottled. So I definitely picked up on that bad habit, and it's definitely something I'm still working through of, okay, I need to not bottle up.
Yeah.
Because once we get past the bottling up phase with it, I have thankfully have gotten to the point where I'm not afraid of conflict or those hard conversations, but it's getting past the first point of wanting to just bottle it up
Yeah.
and not move on, and just keep it there and just keep telling myself, oh, I'm good. But really all I did was just stuff it way deep down. Which I don't end up realizing until later, where I'm like, oh, I actually wasn't over this. Yes, I talked about the God box thing, and I thought it was good, but I actually wasn't good.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the one that I struggle with the most out of these 4. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Oh, it'd be number 4 for me as well. I think for most people, like normal people, you're not one. But for me,
Here's the bus that Dave's driving. Badoosh, right over Josh. No, I'm just kidding. I know I'm not normal. That's okay with me.
I think the majority of people would probably say each of these gets harder the farther you go.
Oh.
Like all by myself, just to get it out, it's just me and God,
Yeah.
right? But then after that, I actually want to follow his example. That's bye, Elizabeth. that get more difficult, and then to turn it from focusing on the hurts of the people inflicted in me to my own need to be able to grow, and this is an adequacy in me, and then finally conflict face to face, right? Dealing with it. I think most people probably find it gets a little harder each step, but again, there's a normal, how it usually happens. People are going to fall outside of that and find different areas harder for them. No doubt about it.
For sure. I actually just was thinking of a question that just popped up, and I know this is very much something that's talked about in culture a lot. And I'll ask both of you this question. One of the things that we hear so much is if you don't forgive an offense the first time and let it go, that you're 100% in the wrong and you're holding this over somebody's head. Is it okay if we forgive people in like stages? Like say there's multiple offenses and like, all right, I'm going to work on forgiving them for this and then moving on, which is very countercultural because that they tell you it's like, all right, you either 100% cut that person off or you forgive them 100% at one time. So would you say it's okay if we have a process of forgiveness?
Depends. And the reason I say depends is like if you have multiple issues with a person, then dealing with that one issue at a time is really the smart way to go about doing it. Because if you import a bunch of issues into one conversation, it never goes anywhere, right? Because we need to focus on one thing, work it through the resolution, then we can focus on something else. So in that case, absolutely the case. But oftentimes what happens is we don't understand the nature of forgiveness. Because the essence of forgiveness is a promise we make not to use a person's sin against them ever again. That's like the grassroots a point of what forgiveness is about. So if I'm going to forgive someone, it involves making the promise, I forgive you, I'm not going to use this against you ever again. By the way, it also doesn't mean that I don't bring it up. But I don't bring it up to punish. I would only bring it up if it can be helpful and beneficial to the person. So I make the promise, but then there's keeping the promise. That's the hard part, is keeping that promise. And there will be times I fail to keep the promise I made, at which point I need to go, it's not that I didn't forgive, it's that I stumbled in keeping the promise I made. I'm going to repent of that, and now I'm going to keep working on keeping that promise. So it's not that you didn't forgive, it's just working that forgiveness through in real life can be a hard process.
Yeah. For sure. Anything to add? I know that was a big one.
It was. And then my answer originally changed a little bit after I heard Dave's. But at first I was going to say, like, it's situational, but I would rather see myself or others try to do it in like segments or phases than not deal with it at all. But I can see, the positives and negatives with that route too. I think as long as you're trying. Sometimes you have to do certain things in your own way and you'll make mistakes along the way. And then to your point, ask for forgiveness, try again, or figure out what you could have done differently or before you try again. So just keep trying. Don't let it sit. I've let a lot of things sit years. I had somebody that I lost in my life, my sister, when I was a junior in high school. And I kid you not, the day that she died, I was like, I'm just going to go back to school. Remember my put it under? That's a big one, right? And it was my first soccer game of the season, and I went and played, and I just tried my best. I just immediately was like, I need to stay in the routine, and I'll kind of deal with it. And then, fast forward on in life, when I had my first child, I had all these different feelings and that was just one moment of hurt and grief in my life. And I mean, there was so much that then I realized I needed help. Yeah. And I got professional help, and I'm still pulling things back, and I have been going through it in phases, I feel like, and sometimes have had to redo phases I thought I got through, and I just think everybody has to kind of be honest with themselves and just keep trying and ask for God to be in your heart so that you're not dealing with it alone, and think about the resources you have with your friends and your family and your church. And so I kind of do. I think the really big things in life, I have to do it as I can, you know?
For sure. One of the best things I've ever heard about forgiveness or about holding an offense towards somebody and working through forgiveness is we're inside of a jail cell, but we're holding the key to get out.
Yeah.
We're choosing to keep ourselves in this cell when we don't forgive whatever the offense was. But we got the key right here.
Yeah.
All we got to do is go and open the door, but we're choosing to stay in it. That's the best way I've ever heard broken down.
That's a good way of looking at it, Josh. And Layla, you said something that is so profoundly important and helpful that I want to emphasize it. And that is that when you're working through issues, and it might take, because there's multiple issues, it might take multiple years to work through them. But the entire time, you have a spirit of reconciliation. The entire time, you have a heart that is open to God. Yeah. And that's what matters. It's interesting that when one of the statements Jesus made while on the cross was, "Father, forgive them, they do not know what they're doing." And one of the fascinating things about that is that Jesus didn't say to the people crucifying and mocking him, "I forgive you." He said, "Father, forgive them." And what he was exhibiting there was that he had a heart of reconciliation. He wanted everything to be right between those people and God, between those people and him. He couldn't give them forgiveness because they hadn't repented and asked for it. But his heart was filled with forgiveness. He had a reconciling spirit, so he wasn't vengeful. If we have that kind of heart, then as we're working through issues, we're always going to end up in a good place. That's the spirit we want to adopt. And in that spirit, over time, we will work through issues and we can come to resolution.
Yeah, I love that.
That's really good.
That is how the process looks later right there. But you need the heart of reconciliation like you've had. Yeah. That's good.
That's really good. Well, thank you guys for joining, as always, our post show. Dave for popping in. Dave's going to be popping in every few weeks. Every week he comes, "Hey, give me somebody for the post show," because I'll come do it. Dave absolutely loves getting to do the post show.
I love the interaction.
So,
I love it.
There might be some Sundays that he just pulls up a chair right here and he's like, "I'm going to be in this conversation because I want to talk about it."
Maybe.
But one of the things that we also do that Dave is a part of is our midweek Q&A. You can submit your questions at my3c.org. Go to the top. There's a submit a question tab. It's totally anonymous, and you can submit a question literally about anything that has to do with the Bible. The way that we're doing our Q&A now, in case you haven't seen, is we're picking a topic from a majority of questions that have been asked or something that ties into the message that we just had. And we're diving into it deeper every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. live on Facebook and YouTube. It also goes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and then you can watch it after on Facebook or YouTube also. But we're just diving into the questions that you guys have about whatever specific topic we end up picking. And you can submit questions about today's message, about forgiveness, or anything else that you come across in the Bible that you want answered. So I highly encourage you to do so if you have any questions. But until next Sunday, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you stay dry from all of the rain that's coming. And we hope to see you either Wednesday night or a Q&A or next Sunday at one of our 3 services, 8:20, 9:40, or 11 o'clock. See you guys.